Well, this is exciting here today. Happy Monday, everyone. Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving week here. I thought we'd have a couple weeks off here, especially getting through the holiday. We were waiting on the UFL schedule. We just got done with all our CFL coverage, but here we are today. The UFL officially announcing, what their process for expansion here in 2026. So, I wasn't even going to do anything. I wasn't quite sure if we were going to do this. We got John Lewis here. Max was like, you got to talk about it today. I'm like, Mike Mitchell's like, you got to talk about it today. So, John, I wasn't sure if we were going to do the stream. This time of year, there's sicknesses floating around, right? People get sick this time of year. John, I have a fever today. And the only prescription that can help it is expansion. And so that's what we are.
And you got it. And you finally got it.
And we got it today. But no, this is interesting. So John Lewis, welcome. We have a lot of new subscribers going through all the CFL stuff. We just got done with our Grey Cup show. John Lewis has his own YouTube, John Lewis Sports. Appreciate him coming on today. John does a really good job at really kind of more manageable sized content coming out, which I think is always great. And then obviously we do a little bit longer form on here. So I'm sure John will be doing that. We will discuss everything today. I have the press release. We can talk about the Switzerland tryout we have going on next year. A lot of stuff. So this is good, kind of a catch on. John, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. It's just amazing. We have an international event with the UFL. We've got expansion now, but we still don't have the 2025 schedule. Just any time now. The coming weeks, it's coming. We've heard that for over a month now. So hopefully, maybe they're kind of ushering us in with some news like, hey, expansion's coming. Then maybe next week we'll get, hey, here's the schedule for 2024.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting timing. Yeah, I know. And I was doing that today because I put out the thing. I'm like, expansion in 25. And I'm like, oh, no, we're going into 25. This will be expansion in 26. So to kind of, and we'll pull it up here. I have all the details. And then we'll do a little bit more kind of a deep dive here through all this stuff. But yeah, it is kind of a bizarre schedule release kind of here. We thought we were waiting on the schedule. I think we're waiting on MLS schedules here in December. So maybe we'll get all of that stuff going on. And then we can kind of release all that. Where obviously if like the XFL if the UFL release like the Defender schedule, then they would know games at Audi Field and that disrupts kind of all the other things going with all this. But John, I do think this is unique. Obviously, we've had in the past the UFL talking expansion. Okay, we're taking away teams, right? The USFL, okay, we're putting the Tampa Bay, the Bandits on hold. Okay, we're relocating things. In the merger, right? We lost part of the franchises here. We're bringing back. But to me, this is the first, like, we are looking to expand here for the UFL, at least as far as I know, kind of a recent memory of like actually written up. Kind of curious your thoughts on that first and foremost.
Yeah, I was interested to see that it was a press release. It wasn't, it was a, as they usually do, their media storm. There you see the press release. It was on Instagram. It was on all social media. And you're right. Something that you said last year that we talked about in the preseason before. You said, and I completely agreed. We needed to see some kind of progress from the UFL from season 1 to season 2. And we thought maybe that would be expansion to kind of show that here's a signal that this is growing. So the expansion obviously didn't happen, but now we're starting to look at this and say, okay, they're positioning themselves to maybe add a couple of teams, maybe add 4 teams. As Mike Mitchell said, it could happen, 2 teams in 26 and another 2 teams in 27. We'll see how it all shakes out. But the optimism of this to really put a press release out, with quotes that it's open right now, and that either we don't really know what the situation is as far as it does say launches the expansion process. We don't really know. I didn't get from this read that is it going to be the UFL is going to reach out to cities, or they want cities to reach out to the UFL? Like, what's going to be the process?
Well, it looks like it is. And I think that's interesting to go through here. Something else to keep in mind, and I hate to be the Debbie on all this stuff. We're talking the Switzerland showcase next year. And we're talking, I think there was like the Under Armour agreement that went through. Like, this is all kind of fluid things. So the UFL goes through this year. If ratings aren't up, if anything's whatever, this is very much like I'm on the rocks with my girlfriend. We're planning a vacation next summer, but we could still get I understand. And this is super exciting and we're on board with all that stuff. Like and subscribe too. If you're checking this out the first time, I know we've got a lot of people coming in from the CFL. Hopefully, all this alternative football stuff kind of fills you in with all that. We should be pretty heavy UFL now, and then trying to get some CFL kind of off off season, kind of postseason, whatever interviews. But that, like, I just want to emphasize that, like, because I see this all the time, like, oh, they're talking 2028, like that means we have a fight. Yeah, I mean, it's all plans on there, but as Stephen A. Smith always says, like, kind of the list is fluid, and so this is fluid. But at least we're talking about it, and like I said, we can talk about it today because of this was put out. I'll kind of do a little try my reading comprehension here, and John, you can pop in. We'll kind of get through this press release and then give thoughts because I have very specific thoughts, hopefully not as negative as yours. The UFL, United Football League, announced today it's officially launched its first expansion process. The UFL is accepting proposals from prospective markets looking to bring spring football to their communities and be part of the growth of the sport. So I think that's interesting to kind of answer the initial question, like, hey, we're soliciting, right? Our doors are open. We saw the CFL with the XFL years ago. Like, hey, the XFL reached out to the CFL. Their doors are open. And now it's, Russ Brandon and company, like, hey, you want to spring football like here. Curious your thoughts on that first and foremost, because to me, that's an interesting way to approach this.
It is, when I read that, when I see that though, accepting proposals, again, I'd like to know what the process is. Do they contact, let's say, for instance, I don't know, I'll just throw out Louisville, Kentucky out there, which is where I'm sitting. So it's like, will they contact Louisville, or now maybe we're getting into the weeds here, and maybe I'm just kind of a nerd and wanting to know, like, really, like, what the process is. But I will say, I do like that they want to. They talk about prospective markets looking to bring spring football to their communities and be part of the growth of the sport. I think they're seeing this sport grow. I mean, frankly, let's think about this. We're in, let's see, how many years now that we're going into of actual spring football that that's legitimate on network television, spring football. It's been a long time since we've had that. So I think they are starting to see the growth. And, again, like I said, I like the optimism of this to really just go out there. They're not doing this behind the scenes. Maybe there have been talks already, but they're putting this out front. So, maybe this is a call to UFL fans to start talking to their cities to say, hey, listen, they're looking for expansion. Maybe we're the right market. A lot of that can go a long way.
What's interesting to me about this, and I'll read the quote here in a second, but Mike Mitchell has talked our UFL insider all the way back through all the XFL and the USFL stuff and everything, that even as far back as the USFL 2022 that went in the place of the XFL, it's always been an audition, right? For like, would you like to own one of these franchises? Would you like to be a part of this? Trying to sell off or attract the owners and things that way. We are approaching 2025 now. Clearly that has not happened yet, right? There was talks with FedEx, in Memphis, right? And we're going to move everything in there and all of that. But so this is kind of, I feel like, been ongoing in some regard, at least just to try to get people involved, at least on the ownership side. Now it seems like, okay, now we want to get cities involved, like you were saying, call your local congressman or woman, kind of get them involved. One thing interesting to point out, though, is when you start accepting bids come or they don't, right? We just saw the CFL 20 would be the 26th Grey Cup got awarded to Calgary. I think they were the only city of the 9 CFL teams that bid on that wanted to put together a proposal, right? And obviously hosting the Grey Cup is a little different. I would be curious kind of the qualifications of this. Are we looking at different stadium sizes? Are we looking at demographics? Things like that. Maybe we can do, more dive into that later. But, when you open it up for proposals, you got to be, not all of them are going to come in, or they might not be up to snuff for what you're looking for.
Well, and you have to go into a community too that that can support it. I think, obviously, we've talked about this being a TV product, and that's true. But you need to go into a community, as he says, be part of the growth of as the press release says, to be part of the growth of the sport. And, I think there are a lot of communities out there that are poised to do this, that might, not have pro sports, or they might be, be a larger, football community. I think that's what we've seen in Birmingham, forever, St. Louis as well. Well, really, when you're looking at the 8 teams right now, they're part of that community, even though the hub's in Arlington. So, but you're right. I guess, there are a lot of places that could say, yeah, we'll put a bid in, but it's got to be serious. And I think you have to have some corporate backing to make this happen. And I think there are a lot of communities out there that are really ripe to do this right now.
What I do like about this, and then I want to read this quote, and I'll put this away so we can see both of our faces again here. But what I do like about this is at least now we're putting thought process into what cities do we want to operate in. My biggest criticism all the way back up into the USFL 2022 when they relaunched was, well, these were kind of the trademarks we were able to get from the 80s, and those were cities that kind of worked, and that's what we have now. Let's kind of reuse those assets or that IP that we have. No real thought to, like, does Tampa Bay want the spring football team, in whatever? I know the XFL was a part of that, the Memphis thing, kind of all these rolling out. And now, obviously, through the merger, we've gotten this, mishmash of kind of the XFL franchises and the USFL, and nothing really. I've said this before on here. There's very few cities in the 8 that currently play in the UFL that you would sit there on your top 30 list of cities that you want to be in and have a lot of those. Right. So I at least like now that it's not leftovers from things that kind of worked before, we have it. Let's put thoughts into what we want. Let me just read this while I put it away. As the UFL lays the groundwork for future growth, we're excited to begin exploring new markets for expansion, where spring football can not only live, but thrive. The CFL uses that trademark now, live and thriving. So maybe we'll have an IP dispute. UFL President and CEO Russ Brandon, these expansion efforts validate our vision of early success, demonstrating how spring football resonates with fans, reinforcing our commitment to broadening its reach. With strength and structure of our ownership group, along with our media partners, we are well positioned for the long haul and look forward to identifying communities that have the potential and desire to host a UFL team. In its search to identify the strongest markets, UFL is looking at several core attributes, including fan interest, existing sports culture, geography, population, venue, and infrastructure availability. And it talks about the 8 right now, and they will all be playing this year. This would be for a potential 2026 season. Did we get everything through that press release?
I think we've gotten a lot through there, and it's interesting that they put new cities in there, which there was some concern, I think, on my end when I first saw this, that they were going to expand. It's like, well, they own the IP, as you talked about there with the USFL and even the XFL. I do wonder if that do they lean on that? Do they try that again? Do they try Orlando again? Do they try to put a team in New Orleans because of the IP? I don't know. I hope that they have that this is a process where, as they said in this release, that they have a desire to be in the communities have a desire that to be for the UFL to be there.
Yeah, we're just going to read
exactly what James says there. Yes.
Yeah, they definitely should find markets and what, because that's the thing. I mean, it's just been this weird kind of mishmash. The question that you brought up as well, and we were talking in the group chat, kind of getting ready for this. Yeah, do we see do we go back to New Orleans and maybe it's the Breakers or maybe it's something else? Do we incorporate? We had the LA Wildcats and the Guardians, and obviously they went to Orlando. But are we? If I'm a Seattle fan, well, I'm a Seattle fan, but if I'm my friends that texted me today, of course, and this will get into why I think they did this, but if I'm a Seattle fan, knowing that the team got taken away and they end up putting a team in, San Diego or whatever, right? Shout out Andy. Am I mad that San Diego got an opportunity at this before we did, and we were part of this, and we kind of got mixed, cut off in the chopping block there? What do you make of if you're a fan of one of these existing franchises went away and then you don't get them coming back?
Yeah, and I think are you going to have some sore people in Orlando, which that was just such a bad team. I don't know that a lot of people wanted to show up to watch them. I mean, frankly, that's just how it was. But are you going to have some people who are going to be upset? In some of these other markets, I think Tampa Bay is another market where it sounds like there are a lot of people who really wanted the Tampa Bay Bandits back. In that community. I mean, I think that's going to be no matter who you mentioned that were former XFL or USFL teams. So yeah, I mean, you do run that gamut of, or that risk of, maybe alienating a fan base and losing those fans because, oh yeah, you gave us a taste of this and then you took it away and now we're not getting it back. So why would we be invested in it?
My camera here is tweaking out. Maybe there. I think I got the hand control under, and I think it's wants to start tracking my head on here. So curious, and then what I put in the comments, cities, kind of opportunities. We'll go through all that. We'll kind of workshop all that. This is a fun kind of hour brainstorming today. We'll get to all of that. So where you live, where you want. I'm already seeing New Orleans, Huntsville, Mississippi. So put that in the comments. We'll kind of go through some of that workshop, but. Why now, John? I want to ask you, and then I'll give my thoughts. Why now on November 25th? We don't have any of this other stuff going on. Why did we decide to announce this today and put out an official press release?
The timing, I don't understand, especially when we're still waiting for, this schedule. And maybe, as I kind of alluded to earlier, maybe it was like, okay, well, we're going to try to ease into, we think the schedule release is going to be the big deal, but hey, let's maybe try to get a few headlines here. And listen, and if that's what they were trying to do, it worked. Go ahead. I mean, if you look up, UFL expansion right now on Google and hit the news tab, you're going to see a lot of responses. So it never hurts to maybe get that out there. I was a little excited Sunday in the Fox pregame. It's like, we're going to return with a Fox exclusive announcement. And I thought maybe they're going to do it right now, but it was something about some race car thing. And I don't know what it was, but maybe that is, maybe they're trying to just, drum up a little, like, okay, let's get UFL in the headlines and then have the schedule release coming up. I mean, you're trying to guess, what they're doing. If maybe there is a strategy there, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, that's what I think. And we were talking in the group today because of course I wake up. Dorothy was doing conferences today. She's a teacher. And so I get up and I just put in the group chat, what the F is wrong with this league? Like and I know that I get the Mr. Negativity and all the time on that, but I'm like, why are we focused on this? Can we just get into year 2? You want these cities to, put the work in to get the bid. You haven't even really proven that you can do sustainable, right, year after year on all these. We saw dwindling numbers on most of the markets, right? I mean, even St. Louis and DC, which Greg Parks just put out a good article on UFL board talking that they were at one of the Sports Business Journal conference or something, Russ and whoever was there. And Greg, if you want to go look up Greg Parks's, I was just reading that before. They're talking about, the success we had in St. Louis and DC. I'm like, you guys didn't make that. None of the current successful UFL markets had anything to do with current management, right? That was all carryover from 2020. So let's just put that in mind. But this is, like you said, this is free marketing. We're going into the season. There's not a lot of buzz. We don't have a new hub. We don't have a merger. We don't have additional cities. But like now we kind of have the promise of a potentially new cities here in 2026 and 7. Like to me, like I said, my buddies texted me this morning. Hey, the Sea Dragons are coming back. There you go. You already have people that were lapsed fans that now go. And is it disingenuous? No. I mean, I think that this is a real thing. I'm not saying that. And I understand why they're doing this, but this is a hell of a lot cheaper than actually expanding this year or actually adding cities. Like, hey, we're just going to have a press release. Like, if you want to be involved in this, it's kind of like I see a lot on like Twitter now where someone will be like, well, if a team's looking for a football player or something, like, well, they're currently like looking at their options or whatever. And you see these people like, hey, if Sydney Sweeney wants to date me, like I'm available. Like, yeah, sure. But the difference of that. But I think that there's part of that in there, and you're setting up this like, hey, we're so desirable now. If you want us to come to your city, I like that, right? It's a little bit of gravitas, whatever, a little bit of like, hey, we have something to offer. I like that. But this does just feel like, how can we kind of get some buzz? And I would say, yeah, as soon as the MLS schedule comes out, and maybe we have something next week, irregardless of that, just after the Thanksgiving break, maybe we get another kind of random news leak. But it does seem like just kind of a way that this kind of a slow week, people are around. Let's see them talking about the UFL.
Well, and I will say too, you talked about the success there, of those markets. But, let's look at the success, maybe some of the benchmarks of the UFL for maybe not just attendance, but also for, TV ratings and revenue. And I think you have to, if you look at that overall, you have to say that was successful, especially when you think about where that league started with a merger that seemed like it just happened overnight. And then they're trying to get off the ground and trying to get trying to get these venues going and trying to get these teams together. I think overall that was a success. So, to me, maybe this is a little bit of, rah, listen, we had some success last year. Now, look, we are growing. So we want to tell you that we're going to expand. And again, I think, I think that the end game here is to have franchise owners. So if that's the case where there are maybe some potentials out there, some potential owners, they'll say like, okay, They had their initial season after the merger. It was a success when you look at a lot of different benchmarks. Maybe this is something that I will want to invest in because here's an opportunity.
There's a lot of double speak here, right? We were told, in addition to the trademark, kind of them having all that back, the USFL was putting cities in places where they thought they had potential ownership. Hasn't seemed to be, there's a lot of double speak here. And now, as to your point, okay, maybe now we want the cities to reach out, but then do we have anyone in that city that wants to buy a team and franchise it? I mean, we've seen in the CFL, and I don't know if I've always said that I hope that the UFL is starting to look at itself more like the CFL and not like the NFL, where, hey, we can put on whatever we want any day of the week. People are going to watch, it's BDE, come in here. We're going to kind of take care of everything. Where the CFL, we got to build in the local communities. We got to engage, the communities. We got to send out players. If you own one of these teams, you got to put in a ton of work. We were just at Grey Cup in BC. Ownership there put in a ton of work, more so than the three previous. And no besmirchment on any of those, but put in additional to kind of show hey, we're really invested in this. And so now, let's say you end up going to Tulsa and then, you still don't have anyone there that wants to own the team. I guess the league can I don't know. It still feels a little messy to me. It still feels like cart before the horse. And we kind of got to get something out here, but I don't, if you pick Portland and then you put a team there, do you have
right.
anyone in Portland that wants to own a team in the next 5 years? I don't know.
Well, none of this is not unprecedented. I want to read you something here just really quickly.
Yep.
Looking to add up to 2 new clubs to the 8-team league as early as next season, the XFL has put together a platoon of expansion experts that will visit Washington, D.C. on Tuesday. That was from March 23rd, 2001. So like you, I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but these things have happened before. Now, I'm not comparing the UFL to XFL 2001 because that was that went straight that way. I think the UFL is going this way. But when we start to talk about expansion, I think there will be first of all, I think there will be a league in 2026, but 2025 is going to be very important to see if this expansion and these ideas and talking to these cities will work, because they need to see something that they want to buy into. So I think there does need to be some benchmarks that they have to meet and exceed in 2025 to make that happen.
Well, and I guess that also leads me to kind of ask that follow-up, because we've had Mike Mitchell on here a lot talk about, okay, this year is make or break for the UFL, for Fox, for everyone involved. Mm-hmm. Okay, last year we kind of got through it and it was the late merger. We couldn't do any of that. We're still on kind of the delayed timeline again this year, and we don't have the merger. So that leads to be desired. But I still think this is a make or break. I saw comments immediately when Mike Mitchell, I think he quote tweeted the press release, and then he was adding his additional context. And you had people asking oh, well, this means we're set to go this year. Absolutely not. Like I said, this could all go away in an instant. I did think it was funny. because we're getting all these rollouts. And, we had the season tickets were available, and then we had the home and away matchups, and then we had the theme nights. And I am nowhere near a Mike or an Evan or a Sam Shady. I'm talking with a lot of players and coaches. I mean, people will reach out, and I got friends that kind of I talk to, but I'm not, I would never pretend that I'm in that whatever. But I did have a UFL coach reach out to me. Well, we don't have coaches, but we have theme nights. So I just, I thought that was interesting. And I don't know if that's a shared sentiment or if that's an individual opinion, but I thought that was interesting that this is all kind of glitz and glamour, but at the end of the day, we want to put, we still got to put a football team on the field. So.
Well, and we're starting to close in here. I mean, was it March 28th is going to be the kickoff. So yeah, I don't think it's going to, I think that the main thing is, and I asked Daryl Johnston this question about, does it feel like you're miles ahead already because the merger's over now and now you're starting to plan? So I'm okay with this rollout right now because there are obviously some things behind the scenes that they have got to get ironed out. And, like you said, they're probably waiting on the MLS schedule so they can figure out with, DC and some other places and how they're going to move things around. But yeah, I'm okay with this because they can focus on these. I think they can focus on these kinds of things. Maybe not to our liking, but to the fan base in general, where they can say, yeah, hey, we got this happening, we're already planning for this, which were probably things that they couldn't even begin to think about this time last year as they got ready to go into the first season of the UFL.
Yeah, it's also it's you always want to have a publicly outward facing kind of positive image, right? And this does speak to you, like, hey, see, we're doing, as opposed to like hat in hand, them calling the CFL, a couple years ago, like, hey, would you like to talk about any of this stuff? Like, this feels like, like, I'm a freelancer, I do weddings. When you go to events and you're like networking things, everybody's doing great, right? Everyone's, I got lots of gigs and I'm so booked and I got all this, like, so it's a thing. I mean, perception, you fake it till you make it. And even like when I started the company, there was a lot of like we and us and whatever, even though it was just me for a long time. But so I'm saying all that. We have some comments here. We kind of help spur any other conversation here, talking about team numbers and cities and all of that. I did like this. Our friend Gregory, and I know we were just talking about Gregory the other day. He goes, why expansion now? They felt like the Stallions needed competition. So I like that. Like, well, we beat all the teams. We need
some new teams to beat. Right. I like it.
But yeah. Any other thoughts on that? I can keep going to other comments here.
Yeah, I mean, the Stallions have been the Yankees of all these leagues here for a while. So no, I get it. I think Birmingham. Mike Mitchell wrote something, I think it was before this past season started, about how Birmingham was the gold standard. And it's true. And it's just too bad that that city, I thought, should have embraced Birmingham a little more. But I think some of that comes to, talking to some people in Birmingham when I was down there this past spring. They frankly did. Some people in the general public didn't know that the Birmingham Stallions existed. So there's something, there's something to that. To your point, as you were talking earlier, you got to get into these communities and you got to really start working on these things. I got there the day before and went out to the stadium, just kind of walking around. The only Birmingham Stallions sign that I saw was a small sign over the ticket window and where the media passes were that said Birmingham Stallions, media credential pickup. So, there could be a lot more things. And I think that was the case in a lot of cities. That the marketing efforts, they need to be there and maybe not just be seasonal workers.
What I would like is some sort of deck to come out of like, this is what a UFL team, they have the press release. Okay, we're looking for certain demographics, certain whatever. I would like that to be a little bit more public. I thought, just speaking of Birmingham, that really spurred my memory of when we used to have Roy S. Johnson that could come on a lot, and he wrote for AL.com.
Yeah.
He did a lot of the research there with the Birmingham, what was that, the BJCC or whatever, kind of the conglomeration around there. But, he had numbers of, there was this much increase in attendance over a comparable period years before, and there was this much more revenue. And I think, parking made this much more. We had all these different kind of infusions of that to show the benefits there was of a spring football, at that point, a USFL franchise being there. And so I would like, can we get either from the league, what do they feel like some of these teams are worth, right? I think obviously we're talking the CFL here, and this is a very similar, just having just gone through this bidding process with Winnipeg and the Calgary getting the Grey Cups. I just view it similarly that way, but obviously we have way more track record knowing what the Grey Cup kind of means to an influx. But what does this mean from the teams? And then, like you said, what are they looking for? I mean, we have the press release and it says, we want, let me just put it back up here, we're looking for fan interest, existing sports culture, geography, population, and venue and infrastructure availability. That's kind of a weird statement anyway. I don't know who Russ is. Russ, come on, Russ. But like, what does that mean specifically? I would love to know. Fans of this league that are tracking its growth would love to know, like, what exactly are you looking for? What kinds of fans are you looking for? What kind of populations are you looking for? Do you want to be in markets with an NFL team? Do you want to be in only markets that don't have an NFL franchise already? Like, I would just love more transparency of that. I know that we always want that in these spring leagues, but like just more data and analytics that way. Cause we did get a really good picture, and the USFL, at least that first, and I think it was the first 2 years there in Birmingham, Roy was able to track positive growth, throughout, even if, we poo-poo the attendance or whatever, but it meant a lot to the city. So I would just be curious now, like, now that we have even more years of kind of research under our belts of like, what does a DC Defenders home game average bring in? What kind of revenue are we, what kind of concessions are we getting there? What kind of gate revenue? I would just like to know that. Are people coming into town? Are there, are you traveling with the team, right, to come in, or you live on the East Coast? I don't know. I'm rambling there, but does that make sense?
It does. And, when I read that passage there, it sounds like they are looking for data, like whether they're trying to gather that data themselves or they want the cities to come back and give them that data.
What should we be looking for? Please tell us.
Yeah, right. It's right. It's like, can you give us this information, or, how is that going to work? Again, it kind of goes back to my question of how this process that they were talking about, really works. Are they going into these markets? Is there some, corporate matchmaker happening here? I'd like to know, like, those are the things they want when they talk about, infrastructure, and they talk about, really like population and demographics and the fan interest and the culture and all that of these cities. Then, where does that data come from, and who's trying to gather that? Are they trying to gather that? Do they want the cities to provide that? I don't know.
A couple of questions here. This will spur Abdul just this funny. A UFL would love XFL 2001's TV ratings.
The first week they probably would, not the last weeks.
Very true. But and like I said, while we're just on, like and subscribe, join the channel, help support. I think we put up we got a ton of subscribers with the CFL sub, which was great. I think we even added a couple new members there, that 99 cents a month.
Nice.
Yeah, it's nice getting that extra $12 or whatever in my pocket with all that. But John, Tanner has a question here I think is really good. What do you think the team cap should be for their foreseeable future? I become spoiled with the quantity of talent the UFL currently has. I don't want to dilute it. I think it's very important, right? We're still dealing with this second, third tier, right, athlete, however you want to look at it here with the CFL and all these alt leagues. We kind of can see that we can put a decent 7-8 teams on the field here, but are you worried about expansion kind of diluting that talent base?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think Tanner brings up a good point, because that's what's going to happen. Because, I mean, when you look at what happened with, you had the USFL and the XFL playing the 1 year at the same time, there were some bad teams in there. And we really didn't see that to that point, or, even if teams didn't have a great record, you didn't see a lot of bad play. I didn't feel like that was an exception rather than the rule, when you saw a team that just had, just bad play or get overwhelmed by something. Now, we did see that in the UFL championship, but you're right. I think there probably needs to be a little bit of an influx of, you want them to come in here to, all things being equal, you're going to have some more funds to pay these players. I mean, that's just math. But I think you want it where you're going to get, let's say there's 10 teams in 2026. You want 10 good quarterbacks. You want 10 good coaches. I don't know what kind of cap you're going to put on, the team as a whole, or is there going to be maybe a different cap or just a straight salary for the coaches? That's something I don't understand how any of the mathematics and finances work there. But I agree, Tanner has a good point there. You don't want to just, bring in teams, maybe, lower how much you're going to pay, because you're just not going to have a great league. And that's the one thing that I really liked about the UFL last year, was we saw a lot of good play over the entire season.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of comments when we had both leagues going back and, at the same time kind of compete, like there might not be 16 spring football quality starting quarterbacks right now, right? There might not be whatever that number would be, offensive linemen quality. I remember we had Eric Galco on years ago, if you want to look at the past YouTube stuff, but we had him on former DPP back in XFL, 2020. They're involved in that with Sam and everyone. And what were the biggest concerns for him in terms of roster building and numbers and kind of all of that stuff. Denzel, I see your question here. We'll talk AJ at the end. I do want to mention the AJ stuff, and I don't want to forget about the Switzerland stuff. So Denzel, I've got your thing. Whatever. Gregory here. It is fine. On a serious note, the NFL probably wants to see robust spring football. Every team wants their Jake Briggs and Brandon Aubrey. Side note, really a roller coaster for Reed yesterday.
Oh, man.
The Dallas Cowboys special teams. I hate all of them just because they're the Cowboys. Brandon Aubrey's been on the show, like great guy. We joke a lot in the chat about, oh, I hope he misses just because it's the Cowboys. If he played for any other team, I hate the Cowboys. Commanders fan. But we had Brandon Aubrey blocked field goal, missed extra point, and then I think he almost missed one of the field goals.
Yeah.
I'm like, living life. And then that damn Kavontae Turpin with the game-sealing kick return, incredible, 99-yard
that
ball,
spin move
dropped
was
the
just
ball,
unreal.
went through his legs, and
Right.
they always talk about that. Disrupts the timing. Everyone's coming down that extra half. Anyway, I almost threw my phone against the wall. I was very, very frustrated.
I can imagine. And there, there's a former New Jersey general right there who's getting it done. You're right. And when you saw, like, I can't remember what the final numbers were, but how many UFL players ended up, at least getting a shot at practice, in camp, being a practice player, or ended up on a roster. I mean, there were a lot. And I think he's right. I think the NFL does want viable spring football because certainly college football, NCAA college football, that's their free, training camp. That's their free farm teams for the NFL. But I think, if you have some players who aren't NFL ready, but could really enhance their play and become good players, as we've seen this year through spring football, why would they not want it? I do worry, though, that if the NFL decides to dip in on it, if they lose $1, they're going to shut it down. We've seen that too often. So I'm kind of on the fence there about how much do I want the NFL involved with the UFL.
Yeah, it's just hard. And I know this would never happen just because of injuries and everything, but we've seen what's happened this season with an Anthony Richardson, right?
Right.
Wouldn't that be awesome and I understand, if football wasn't nearly as violent, right? But we see this all the time in hockey, right? Where you draft a player, even the Kraken right now, we draft a player, they're not ready. We go send them to play in Europe, kind of does the track that way, or we send them to the minors, and then we bring them up. Look at someone like Anthony, and someone that just put Indianapolis in here, which kind of made me thinking about it in terms of teams. Send someone like him to the spring league. Get 10 weeks of rep. Get kind of comfortable with it. Can the Colts loan someone? Can we make some relationships that way? I understand it's totally different, but hockey does that a lot. I just think that works. Is you get all these guys coming in and they just aren't ready to go, and then they kind of fall to that. I had a comment. I lost on that. Here it was. Indianapolis will be spending $30,000 on an MLS style stadium, entertainment district. I believe they'll be interested. They already hosted half of the spring league back in, what was that? The 21 season. Brian Woods famously housed the players there in the hotel district, did not pay his bills, and left the city with a $1.2 million in debt. So Indianapolis might be a little bit on the fence about getting back involved in the spring football. If you missed, Brian Scott, Grey Cup winning champion quarterback here, third on the depth chart with the Argos. His name will be on the trophy. Chad Kelly's will not this season, which is interesting. Was part of the CFL show. If you want to catch up with Brian, that's on it's all time coded on there. But wonderful talk with Brian about the CFL. Brian Woods building the spring league out of cardboard boxes in his garage. Really great to catch up with Brian. My mom, he was the shining point. My mom says, that boy at the end was really nice.
That's great. But yeah, Indy could be one of those teams. You're right. They might be a little gun shy there with that, but I think there are a lot of opportunities. The question is, and Mike Mitchell is in the know, if it's going to be 2 in 2026 and maybe 2 in 2027, who are the 4, and how much of an eye are they going to keep on this? And you got to think about geography too. There's a lot that goes into this because more than likely, unless something changes, these teams aren't going to, be housed there in their cities. I mean, I'd love to see that because you just have so much community support, especially in a lot of places, take Indy, for example. Obviously they're football crazy in the fall. But they do have a lot of spring sports there, but they could be, that could be community centric. There are a lot of places like that. As we were talking earlier, 2025 is going to be a resume for these cities and this expansion for the next 2 years.
All right, so let's look here at cities. I had a comment from Leon and just speaking with Mike Mitchell and all of that. Yeah, I heard Ohio is a strong possibility. That's very true. So Mike Mitchell reporting before kind of the merger and the cities came out, and he's doubled down on that afterward. Ohio very much in the mix there. There could have been 10 teams going into the merger. They ended up settling for 8. So we bounced back to 10, kind of do that slow impact, kind of slow increase that way. We do Ohio. Andy Murray, San Diego resident, seems down on San Diego now. We've lived through Vegas. I don't think you go back to Seattle. Lumen's too expensive. It's too far travel. Do you look in Oakland somewhere? I think that would be kind of cool. Spurred fan base there. John, where do you see, if you do Ohio, which I think is like pretty a no-brainer to add back into this just because it was originally, but where do you do that East Coast? I don't think Portland works. I don't think Seattle works. I think that's too far north.
Yeah, I love Oakland, and I know there are so many issues there with California. There's been a lot of talk about a lot of governmental, there's restrictions and insurance and a lot of things that happen there with California, where it might price the UFL out of business as far as trying to put a team there. But all things being equal, it seems to me what worked for St. Louis was a team that was jilted, and they have a very strong base. To me, San Diego or Oakland would certainly fit that bill if you've got the right venue. But the thing is, too, if you have a West Coast team, do you need 2 out there, or do you try to do another Midwestern like Ohio, which I think Columbus would be the area to do it, and have your 2 expansions be one over here and one over here. To me, the UFL needs a West Coast presence, and if it's not Seattle or Portland, to me, it's got to be Southern California.
The other just to kind of go back to this is I'm in my head here, kind of just trying to picture the map and everything and these teams. Right. And okay, Northeast, we have DC, right? We're not in New York or New Jersey, but we're kind of there, right? Trying to get the West Coast. Yeah. This whole okay, we're soliciting, give us your bids, the contrarian. Shouldn't the UFL kind of know what markets work for them now, as opposed to you tell us if you want? I don't know. I don't want to be that, to go back to that, but shouldn't they have analytics now? Shouldn't Redbird and Fox and just it's like the CFL with the Genius Sports, and we have all this, shouldn't they know kind of where they want to play now?
And maybe they do. I mean, maybe this is a press release to get a few headlines and to let people know we are growing. And we're going to start trying to look, in these different communities. I don't think they flew blind into this. I don't think someone woke up this morning and said, let's put out a press release. I think there's probably a little bit more thinking behind it. So I have to think that they at least have some target cities. I know, even when the previous UFL back in the mid 2000s, they aimed at I think there were 21 different cities they were aiming at. That UFL was weird because they actually played in the fall. They didn't play against the NFL. They played, around the NFL, which the commissioner, Michael Hughes, said he didn't think spring football would ever work because of the time you needed to play in the fall. That's another story. But, so you have to think that they have a lot more information than, hey, let us know if you want a team. We'll come talk to you. I have to think there are some target markets that they have in some dossier somewhere that Redbird and Disney and Fox have put together.
This is interesting. I was just kind of, so a couple of things here, just what I'm working on in the back here. So you had talked about kind of just wanting to kind of get in the news period and all of this stuff here. I mean, you look at this is more people they wrote about the USFL or UFL in, months. You're right. You got Sportico, Sports Illustrated, Bleacher Report, the Newsroom, Sports Business Journal. We even have, 104.3 Idaho.
Yes, Idaho, a good UF. There you go.
But you're getting all these involved, so you're having the mix. But I thought was interesting, and so I pulled up, obviously, friends with our people over at Sportico. I don't know Jason Klingsdale, but I've had a lot of the Sportico reporters on. Looks like he did a phone interview with Russ Brandon, kind of in conjunction with all of this. And so obviously they have the original quote here. This is from their press release talking about that. But I thought it was interesting. In phone interview, Brandon declined to reveal which cities the league is considering, nor information on expansion fees. We're going to stick with the integrity of the process that is have an open mind and good communications with our fellow markets to see where it takes us. Talked about St. Louis having both strong. I've given my thoughts on all that stuff, but St. Louis has obviously been a model franchise. We've had tremendous support there from the legacy into the UFL, legacy XFL into the UFL. We've seen that across many of our markets. We'll be patient, very disciplined with our process, and we'll continue internally to work through all the metrics that we've set ourselves.
Those are a whole lot of words. I don't know that it really reveals much of a strategy. That's good. Open mind, good communication. I mean, we should all have that in our professional and personal lives, but I mean, it's fine. He declined to reveal which cities the league's considering. So to me, they're considering
Wouldn't you leak a couple just to be like, yeah, we're thinking about Tulsa. We're thinking
and frankly, maybe they're floating this to see like, okay, there was a lot of interest here. We're starting to see some returns. People are talking about that. Maybe we leak something out there, especially one that they might really like, a city they really covet. That could very well, be kind of the strategy behind this. We're playing a guessing game because we're not in those rooms. So it's really hard to say like what the strategy is here. But at least, they are talking in a national forum. They are talking to the fans and the general public in a press release. I mean, those are all good things to me.
Leon has a question here, and then I have another. I'm liking I'm doing this. So then Sports Business Journal has some quotes as well, different quotes. So I like that I'm kind of doing this in the background here. But Leon has a question. How many trademarks, I can put it up here, how many trademarks does UFL still have the rights to? A lot. I am on, and I can't even remember how the heck I signed up, but you can sign up for like basically notifications of like anytime the XFL. I mean, now it's kind of been grandfathered in, but anytime the XFL, the UFL. But I get stuff all the time. Like I was getting stuff the other day. The Orlando Renegades, they're still working through the check process. The Showboats are still working through that.
Was it Denver Gold in there?
Denver Gold's in there. Tampa Bay Vipers still working through. Let me just read through real quick. I don't know if this is interesting. John, vamp for just a second while I pull this up.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that was, and I remember you told me the website, and I started going in there, and it was a rabbit hole of all the trademarks that they had. And, it started to cause a lot of speculation too, because people were going in there, especially like Denver Gold. I mean, I would love to see a team in Denver. That would be great. But just because you own the trademarks doesn't mean that you're necessarily like that's you own that to keep it in your back pocket. I think not necessarily like, okay, they're going to go to Denver or they're bringing back the Orlando Renegades or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I got quite a few domains and trademarks and URLs on there. But yeah, I mean, just like I said, this is just going back to, let's just go back. I get a lot of emails from this. I just kind of junk them all in the back, but got the Renegades, Showboats, Vipers, Alpha Entertainment. We've got the Bandits, Birmingham Stallions. These are all working through updates on their stuff. The LA Express, Denver Gold, New Orleans Breakers, still working through that. The Blitz, Arizona Outlaws, the Gold in conjunction with the Denver Gold. I think Canton was part of that too, the Canton Gold.
Oh, yeah.
We're still working through. We have a 5th statement request for extension to use He Hate Me. that was updated as of October. For the love of football, we're still working through. I did want to buy that one. I was trying to at one point when they were working through. I was like, man, if they let that lapse, I'm picking up the For Love of Football. I want to have that trademark. Jacksonville football. So, there's a lot. The Outlaws still working through it. So, yes, to answer Leon's question, they still have quite a few. Like John said, these aren't all like guarantees. It's very cheap, especially if you have Fox lawyers to kind of file and work through all of these things. But it is something interesting to keep in mind.
Yeah, it's fun to talk about, and it's fun to dream about. Like, oh my goodness, can you imagine again, the Denver Gold, which was an interesting franchise and story in itself. But I think you keep a lot of those in your back pocket just in case. And maybe one of those cities are like, hey, you guys already own this. Let's sit down and talk. So.
The other article I wanted to pull up here. So this is from the Sports Business Journal. Again, similar quotes and everything from the press release, but talking, get another phone interview. Brandon cited the league's ratings following its initial 2024 season as to why it feels comfortable attempting to add more franchises. We've had a lot of this is a quote now. We've had a lot of early excitement around the league. Obviously, that's been shown with our ratings, all the measurements from an engagement standpoint. The UFL average 850,000 viewers over its 40 telecasts in 24. It came from the merger. Spring football may have been too saturated with both. They averaged 34% fewer viewers when both were in there. They believe they'll find an optimal number. We're going to see what the sweet spot is, continue to do our due diligence, and see where that plays out. The league has not consulted any banks or lawyers on the expansion process, as Brandon believes its network of leaders and investors gives the league what it needs. We're doing everything internally right now with the power of the individuals that comprise our leadership group. We're going through this first phase initially, then we'll see what resources we need. That's interesting. That was below the fold. I hadn't even gotten that far. I like that. We're not involved in anyone. We know what we're doing.
We're just kind of sitting around a table at the office and talking about it, kind of like we're doing right here, and trying to figure out. That sounds right. Yeah.
You know that meme where it's the guy that's like, what are you doing? Like, me? Nothing. Just hanging around. That's it kind of feels like what this is right now.
Yeah, there's more to this, I really think. And hopefully we'll see that kind of unfold as we get closer. I don't think we're going to hear a lot. This might be as much as we hear, unless they do leak a couple of cities that they might be looking at. But I think this was to get UFL in the headlines maybe, and then, a schedule. So people are talking about the UFL, and then, maybe we'll get a schedule release because, frankly, when the home and away, schedule came out, that was just, which teams are playing which. I mean, I don't know that did a lot of traction outside of our niche, or that how many
I don't think it did a lot of traction in our niche.
You might be right. Like, I mean, how many people were really interested in that? Because it was like, okay, well, Birmingham's playing here and they're playing here. Well, I mean, it's 8 teams. You kind of got that figured out, but I think this could be a process of getting the name out there, getting the UFL in headlines, even though we're in the middle of UFL, we're in the middle of NFL season. And then as we kind of move forward here, is Fox have the Super Bowl this year?
Fox does, yes.
So there's some opportunity there. There's some opportunity for the UFL once again to get, a lot of eyeballs and maybe people who didn't even realize it was a thing last year. In fact, I had someone in sports media ask me today, the UFL, is that the thing that Vince McMahon is involved in? So it's, this is someone in sports media. So they can get some more eyeballs involved here. And hopefully maybe the Super Bowl can help that as well.
Well, and we even have Mike Mitchell was talking today that he's been talking with a lot of his CFL people, and they claim to know this or know that. Andy and I and Evan had more people asking us about the UFL from the CFL media side. Like, they don't, they sit there and this in the league and all this kind of stuff. Leon had a comment here. What's Vince McMahon doing? Definitely out on Vince. I don't know if you've been keeping track of all the news lately, but they just had the Mr. McMahon documentary. Very out of that.
It was really good. The Netflix documentary series was actually really good. But if you watch that, you don't want anything to do with Vince McMahon if you did already.
Abdul, bring back Vegas. I still think if you could have figured out something with Sam Boyd or somewhere else, they had that loyal 6,000 people there. The other comment I wanted to bring up here, I don't know how long you want to stay on this. For a few minutes, hopefully we'll kind of vamp. Dorothy,
I'm here with you, brother.
There was in the article Greg shared, and maybe I can pull that up, but they were talking about it was about Russ, Brandon talking this season about kind of the work they have going on in the markets. We've seen hiring for all of that. I know Greg's been kind of tracking all of that, and just like, can we get 2 or 3 years of just like sustainable UFL offseason living? I mean, I know this is such the sugar rush and everything else, but like, can we get 8 people in each market just building? I think San Antonio is going to be awful this year just because of the lack of the additional home game. The 4 home games they have are really backloaded to the end of the season. Like, there's already issues at play here without kind of anything else.
Yeah, but I think it is a positive sign. I follow, you're on LinkedIn too. And UFL will pop up and it's like, hey, we're hiring for this, we're hiring for that. I think those are all good signs. But I think too, as we started this conversation, 2025 is make or break. So I think that you really could, if this is another successful season, they hit those benchmarks, meet or exceed a lot of other things that they're trying to look at this year. I think you do see that. I think you start to see more than seasonal hirings. I think you see them getting to the communities, especially if you're going to go into expansion. If you have an expansion team, and I don't care where it is, again, as we were talking about Birmingham, there were a lot of people in the general public that didn't know what the Stallions were. So if you can get into these, whatever expansion communities you want to get into, and maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse, but you've got to get in there in the community, and you can't do it by hiring people in, November, December, or January. You've got to get those people in there, like, ready to go through the season. And then as soon as the season's over, to start showing out at these, different events that are in the community.
A couple comments here. Abdul, San Antonio issue. We're just talking kind of the backload. It could happen with Panthers. Ford Field is hosting the Final Four in 27. Let's get to 27. That was like when the Kraken were looking for their offseason. They were hiring a new coach in the offseason. We were talking to like Rob Brindamore was over with the Carolina Hurricanes. And they go, well, Rob's good, but he can't make a deep playoff run. It's like, let me get a coach that can get us to the playoffs. Then we can deal with that. Let's get to 27. Sam here, LOL, 25 isn't make or break. Shut up. We don't need that kind of language, but I would like to know why Sam doesn't feel that way.
Man, that's
what's been reported.
Bad vibes on a holiday week, man. But
I mean,
if you don't think that 2025 is not make or break, I don't know. I mean, we're on completely polar opposite of opinion here, because if they don't have a good 2025, do you really think that they're going to put more, good money after bad? Now, I'm optimistic. I think, I was kind of, we used to talk about the welfare check when we would talk about before the season, and with the UFL, man, who knew? I didn't know. But like, after what I saw in 2024, I'm certainly optimistic about 2025, but it can't be a disaster. And it's, certainly, but it can't be below a certain thresholds, I think, of ratings and revenue and those kinds of things, because they're not going to continue to invest in it.
Yeah, it's like the whole like, oh, we're working on merchandise and we're working on this. We're like, and people like, Reed, you just need to give them time. Spring football never has the benefit of time. Never has the benefit. Right. We need to make the best we can right now. That's why we talk about it, because if you sit around and say everything is fine, then this goes away. Here, where's Leon? The 25 is definitely make or break. The other thing, so I want to talk this Sports Business Journal thing. Yeah, Leon caught the Sports Business Journal video. They seem very bullish. Again, every freelancer I know is booked all the time, and business is crazy and all that stuff. But this was interesting. Just some quotes. So they were here at the Sports Business Journal's Media Innovators Conference. That's nice. We're talking through all this stuff. This Russ brand, and it's about money and execution now with the backers we have. Capital won't be an issue. Patience isn't going to be an issue, even though we're moving to expand here before maybe we were ready for it. But I don't think execution is going to be the issue. The other thing I just thought was interesting in this, again, this is Greg Parks over here. I would encourage everyone to check this out on UFL board. This just came out today. We're set up as a single entity. We did so to maximize speed and flexibility for us as a collective in terms of exits and how we think about return on investment. There's a number of outcomes. We could definitely sell franchises. We could keep it as a single entity. So it's just kind of, I know we know that, but I just always appreciate that kind of the vocalizing, kind of just how they're viewing this, how they're viewing potential, expansion or franchising, kind of all that stuff.
Yeah, and I liked that, because this was in Sports Business Journal. You see that there were a lot of where they talked about, some of the numbers behind it that we don't always see. I do want to point out something. If you'll scroll down just a little bit, you see that Dick's Sporting Good UFL store. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to say that thanks to Greg's page, I was on there and I was like, what is this? And I clicked on there, and they had like deeply discounted Under Armour UFL stuff. So I really hope that Greg got like a cut of that. They had like some incredible prices, and I went on there and bought some stuff. But yeah, to your point there about like, the Sports Business Journal, those forums are exactly like you said about freelancers. Those are to get up there and kind of market yourself, because it's really kind of a marketing thing. But I love where they can really talk about a lot of the numbers, and you see like one of the things, the digital users on the ESPN app, which sometimes we didn't get a lot of those numbers. I would love to know, like, overall, what's the viewing public, not just percentage wise, but like who's watching on these apps, and that's where you get into demos too. And maybe that's just something I'm interested in, but it feeds into the bigger question of how many people are watching the UFL. And I'm sure they probably, put that into the 850,000, but you know, we really don't get streaming numbers that often, if ever. So that would be interesting to know.
We're so Sam's, you know, the hater Sam so tired. We have massive backers, all this stuff. Keep in mind, Disney just canceled the Acolyte after $180 million Star Wars series, or I think it was $185 million Star Wars series they were working on, because it didn't meet the viewership, and there was a lot of backlash and everything in terms of like kind of them woking Star Wars, but like they just scrapped that. They're like, we're done. So if you don't think that having money involved in this from these leagues or from these companies, and that, you know, that's Disney, ABC, right? Obviously they're not, you know, they're a part owner and kind of this stuff. I mean, you slash products all the time. I mean, this isn't just because, oh, we've put 2 years and $30 million into the UFL. Like, Acolyte was gone like that, and that's right. A lot bigger project.
And it's not, losing money is not the only factor. No. It is a big factor. Paramount had layoffs. We're starting to see large, you know, these large TV, you know, ownership groups who are starting to gut stations right now, because, and it's, you know, and it's because it's all money. If you look at the media layoffs that have happened this year, CNN had an article recently about, and they ran down all the media companies that had layoffs. Remember, there are 2 media companies that are involved in this. So if they start losing money, it might not be the only factor, Sam, but it's going to be a big factor.
The other interesting thing here, just to kind of round this out, that the moderator, this is all of the panel still. Moderator took questions from the audience. One asked for a breakdown of focus between local revenue and tickets versus television viewership, which that would also be my question. And what do we care about all this? And it goes, right. Brandon told a story of the Battlehawks fan tailgate hours before home game. He talks about wanting to build the local markets, you know, using the hub, and then wanting to get people in there. They know they have staff of 8 to 10 people in each market, building the basis for our league. We've enormously pleased with the reach and engagement. But I like that. Like, Russ, what can you give us about this? You know, the tailgates in St. Louis are really crazy. Like, because we talk about that all the time. Do you care more? Is this a built for TV product? You talk about, you know, we get all the time the comments and all this stuff. Oh, attendance doesn't matter. They're making so much money on TV. But then, yet there's still now in all of these, now this expansion, all these talks and what markets we want to go to, it's we need fans. We want hungry fans. This isn't just to tell. I would love to know the breakdown of that. But anytime anyone says that attendance doesn't matter because they make all their money on TV, is just foolish to me.
Well, the USFL, you know, that was a TV product. And what was the big knock on the USFL? People didn't want to watch it because there was no one there was no one at the games except for the Stallions games. Those, like in 2022, the Stallions games were packed. Everyone else, it looks like it was a high school practice. Like there were a few people in the stands. I was there. I went there for an entire weekend, and it was unbelievable. Birmingham's there. It's like a awesome atmosphere. And then every other game, there's like, you know, 100 people there. So that was the big knock, because the visuals weren't very good on network television, and it was a TV product. The XFL, I felt, was trying to build a more traditional one with not just a great TV product, but they were trying to put these teams in the communities. And then that's what you have, the conglomeration of both these leagues together. And it's not just a TV product, because the USFL it didn't look good. It didn't work that way. So yeah, so I think attendance does matter, and maybe not even to the revenue side of it. It matters to the optics side of it when you're watching on television, because if anyone who doesn't really know about the UFL and they turn it on, like, well, nobody cares to show up. Why would I care to watch it?
Yeah, John here, Jan just confirming with you. Yeah, that was Fox. They were cost cutting first rather than thinking marketing. Put your comments in the chat. I want to touch on the Switzerland stuff. And then I want to touch on the AJ Battlehawk stuff. And then if anyone else has anything that way, I've lost my screen breakdown here. What do you think? And I want to see if I can just pull up the press release. What do you think of this showcase? What is it, next fall in Switzerland? I don't even think they put it on the website. Let me see if I can get the press release up. What do you think of
that? I don't know what to think of it. It's like, how much football talent comes out of Switzerland, number one. Number two, is that a market that you're trying to reach internationally? I don't understand why this is why this is happening. I mean, I really don't. And if there's a press release, maybe they explain that. I don't remember seeing a press release.
No,
I just remember that's what I saw.
Yeah.
So I don't, mark your calendars for what? I don't understand like what we're marking our calendars for. Is it going to be some kind of televised event? I mean, that might be kind of cool, but I don't understand like why Switzerland. Like, I mean, I don't get it.
Philip here says the UFL purchases Elf. The UFL wishes they had the attendance and fans and money and teams that Elf has. I think that would be that's the other way around of Elf moving into the States before the UFL moving in.
I'm telling you, why the Elf is not. I can't imagine the pay-per-view thing is really working out here in the States. How they don't have a TV contract here yet? I don't get it, because I mean, when you see some of the highlights and I watch some of the videos from over there, it's incredible. But you're right. It might be the other way around on that one.
But yeah, no, the thing that's interesting about this, and I had someone involved back in XFL 2020 reach out to me when this came about. And they said basically, if you wanted to talk about like Germany or somewhere, maybe that there was maybe a proven record of talent, but to them, it felt like this is executives wanting to plan a vacation. And like we can go.
Surprised it's not Hawaii or the Bahamas.
Well, but remember how pissy people were when the XFL did a showcase in Hawaii because The Rock was there and they wanted to attract. But I mean, the Rock lives there. So that was, okay, how can we get The Rock involved in this? We're going to use this as a marketing thing, right? They utilized a lot of that. But then also, like, there is a lot of players, like, in Hawaii and the islands and kind of in that area of the world that came in. And they, spoiler alert, I think that was the most talent there signed to the league of any of the showcases, right? I mean, it was high in terms of, and these showcases are part visibility, part making money, part trying to just, we're filling press releases and doing whatever, but it actually was successful. But I can't figure out how this Switzerland thing's going to work out.
I don't. And the Player 54 episode from Hawaii was really good. And that was like probably that was one of the most memorable ones. That was a really good episode where the Rock went back to some of his old stomping grounds. It was emotional. It was really good. Switzerland, I don't get. Maybe it is a vacation like. Wow, Adam Sandler signs these movie deals and he sets them all in Hawaii or all these tropical islands, so he gets to go there and shoot for 6 months in some tropical place.
We're doing a romantic comedy of a couple with it, but it's going to be in Africa, John. We're going to the story can only be told in the Serengeti. We want to go on the plains here and we want to do all that stuff. Yeah,
there's something to that.
They already did Hawaii. It's almost like Max maybe listening to the show. I don't know if Christina here. Hallelujah. It's great to hear news about expansion. Now, remember, that's Christina is a member here. You always get your comments read if you're a member here. 99 cents a month. I appreciate Christina reaching out for that. I think I did see too. I think I'm eligible now for like the Twitter memberships. I was like, oh, I'm going to start making all my secret tweets. I feel here. I like this showcase episode in Switzerland.
I dig it. That's a great idea. That's a write-off.
It is the one, but we did the showcase in Arizona. It just sucks because you can't really tell what's going. They always get like, oh, are you seeing players? Or you're not really. They're running drills and stuff. We had fun talking to the coaches, and it was just more of a kind of a cool experience that way. But it's not like the secret unknown Swiss quarterback is just going to be it just isn't going to happen that way.
I think Pat Ruffino went to, there was one in St. Louis maybe. And like, there was a lot of access to, or in that area. And there was a lot of access to coaches and I don't know about players, but they got some really good stuff. He got some really good stuff with some of the coaches.
Yeah. Pat's always in St. Louis, except when we went to the championship game.
Of course.
Pat couldn't be in St. Louis. That was good.
Same when I was in St. Louis, he was working or somewhere. He was somewhere else. Yeah.
Speaking of, I want to touch on, if anyone has any questions about this, we'll probably get done here at the bottom of the hour. Like this whole AJ Battlehawks thing, I am curious your thoughts on this. You've been to the Battlehawks, games, and obviously with the merch. Like this to me is the biggest pissy pants story I've ever seen here. What's your thoughts on the AJ thing?
Yeah, I didn't really like it. And frankly, I didn't like it from AJ McCarron's perspective. And, maybe he was wronged and, that could have been the case. I don't think he handled it great. even with the response, like I think the social media post, it might have been on Twitter that he put out about like something about I didn't get a phone call or it doesn't work both ways, but thank you, St. Louis. And it was just, I didn't like it. I didn't like it from any part. Sometimes, I understand this is not the NFL. I mean, even NFL players, they sometimes don't handle things great. So I thought it was, I didn't like it. You're right. It was kind of pissy. It was, and I think Beck tried to clean it up a little bit, but I mean, they said they wanted to like send him out the right way, but they needed to do some other things. I don't know. I didn't like it. It didn't feel good. And I know the one thing he said about like not wanting to ride the plane with the opposing team. It's like, you can still be competitive and ride. Now, listen, I've never taken a snap of professional football, but you can still ride the plane and be competitive with the other team. You're all kind of in the same boat together here. You're all trying to work toward the same goal. I mean, you live in the same city and you're probably practicing. And I remember there was a, I think it was with the first season of the UFL that there were some other players that kind of wandered into the stadium watching practice and didn't realize that they weren't supposed to be there. So it's, it is what it is. It's not the NFL. So, but I thought he could have handled it a little better, especially publicly.
Yeah, I just have questions here. Who you guys think replaces AJ? Jan here, AJ has to understand the stance of the league, its development. If he wants more money or the NFL, go find another league you're tasting.
Right.
I mean, that's what kills me. Philip here, Silvers is out the door. I wouldn't count on Brett, the White Knight here riding that. But that's what kills me is again, just talking the freelance thing, like, I do a lot of gigs and I do a lot of weddings, and some weddings are really nice and some weddings are not so nice. And some things are really like, going in, and if you're AJ McCarron and you're like, I'm going into this UFL and I want my kids to see me play, like, then you can't then be like, well, if it wasn't for my kids, I would have walked the hell out of this league. Like,
right.
Okay, you can do that. Like, you are an adult man and you can do anything you want, and you chose to come. But I just don't like that later. Like, you knew what you're getting involved in. It was kind of like the whole Pizzagate and all that stuff. Like, you're going into these spring leagues. They kind of got the history. I wouldn't be surprised by any of this, but
and he even asked for his release from the Bengals because he wanted to play in the UFL and with his kids. And I was there before one of the games, and he's coming in, walking in to all the fans, and there's his kids are there and his whole family, and it was really cool. And but yeah, it's not, I don't like to call the UFL minor league. A lot of people do. It's a professional football league. I don't think it's minor to anything. It's unless you're trying to compare it to the NFL, and I don't know a lot of people are doing that. But like you said, it's not the top tier of professional football. You knew what you're getting into, and then to complain about it afterward because you kind of got jilted by your team. I don't know. I mean, I just thought it was bad. But listen, here's one thing: if he does stay in the UFL like he says he wants to, he's not, and nothing's going to change, but he says, he's going to get an opportunity to beat the Battle Hawks, twice or whatever. So at least it gives you some kind of storyline. I don't know.
Yeah, I just, I don't know. I don't like that. It seems a little weird to me. Philip here, Silvers is a legend. Roughnecks would beat Arlington if he had played. Rolling back to the I guess the expansion talk today before we get out of here. Anyone else has any comments? Because like I said, I'm kind of over. My thoughts on the Battlehawks anyway, and it's just like
let's see. I guess notorious USFL hater, notorious XFL hater, notorious St. Louis Battlehawks hater. I got it.
I did have one quick question. I forgot. So I will be curious going forward here, the Rock's level of involvement in this league, just because this Red One movie has totally flopped, right?
Shocker.
Totally. but like also it costs $250 million.
Right.
Like I believe I saw like the first Avengers movie cost like $160 million. So like the fact that like Red One it costs more than, and don't quote me on that, but the Red One costs more than the first Avengers movie.
Yeah.
But that crashed. Obviously the Black Adam thing wasn't working out. The DCU universe. I watched that movie, really bad. Rock just had an article about like he wants to do more indie movies and kind of disappear, and he's kind of tired of always playing the same role and all that kind of stuff. I'm just curious, like where the UFL fits into this, like this new 2025 Rock. Just curious your thoughts on that, and then I have another Russ Brandon comment we can go through.
Yeah, I do wonder, and if he is going to maybe take a more hands, because it felt like he and Danny Garcia were going to be. They talked about being really hands on with this and being involved. I never felt that they were that involved this year, certainly publicly. I don't know. I wasn't there behind the scenes. I just thought I would see a lot more of them other than, kind of what we saw before the season started. And he's on, College Game Day, and he's on all these different shows on Fox NFL pregame to talk about the league that I think it was like January 1st or whatever it was. But I do wonder, and frankly, like you said, like he's still a bankable star. Don't get me wrong, but like it's his star is not as shiny as it was when he first came into this. So maybe I think he's a really good actor. And if you've watched Ballers, I thought he was great. He's been good in a lot of movies. But I do wonder if maybe he will concentrate more on that, and they have people there that they don't necessarily need him or Danny Garcia for the day-to-day stuff. Frankly, I think Daryl Johnston might be more hands-on involved with it than anybody of the public-facing people that we've seen.
For better or worse, I would say. Sorry. I did think it was funny that Brandon Aubrey missed. There's not many NFL games this season where they miss the kickoff zone, right? Either they still touch back it, or they land and then it's returnable. But I thought it was funny that Brandon Aubrey missed the kickoff zone, and that was the other thing I forgot, the gaffes of the game. But like, hey, if Brandon Aubrey was in the XFL, maybe he would have known how to do that stuff. The other, but just with the Rocks thing, I don't know if it's kind of a revamp here, focusing on that. But I think his public perception has really hit a dive on that.
Yeah.
The other article I wanted to talk about here, and I was just kind of looking through this news, and a lot of these websites are just regurgitations of their press release. Front Office Sports has some quotes here, and I thought it was nice at Sportico and Sports Business Journal. Like they have additional kind of quotes on here, talking about all this stuff. This is Eric Fisher with Front Office Sports, but they're bringing in additional franchises, building the A, they're moving in. There's not a specific timetable governing the process or a targeted number of franchises. UFL president and CEO Russ Brandon said there'll be fewer than 8 teams, and at least on the outset, something related to expansion might be in place for 2026. We're open for business, very open-minded. We are taking a very holistic approach to the market, look at the market and everything that needs to be done to stand up to a new team. So just kind of curious on that. No timetable. We've heard conflicting reports, like just since today, is it 2026, 7? I just think we're kind of looking through. It was kind of like in the CFL, XFL talks when it was, we're talking about talking. Like, right. I think that was their public facing kind of like, well, what, hey, the XFL is calling the CFL. Like, what does that mean? And they go, well, we're talking about talking. That was their thing. And so, to me, it feels very similar here where, we don't really know what we're doing, but this is something we're kind of working on in the future.
We're having a meeting about some future meetings that we might have later on. Yeah. It's what that's a lot what it sounds like. But I will say it was a press release that was short on a lot of details, but it had one big overarching theme. And it was that I think maybe the subtle theme of we are successful. We are growing. So people, you need to talk about us right now, even though it's NFL season. That's kind of the more we've talked about this and like kind of diving into some of these articles, that's what it really feels like. It's like, hey, let's send something out there to get our name out a little bit and just, float it and see how it goes.
All right, last thing here. Let's do the last 10 minutes on this, or more or less, less probably, but figure out here. So in terms of like, do we in your ideal world here, right? So we get through this season, we move forward. We're gonna have 8 teams. We've talked to Ohio. Do we move the Roughnecks back over to the XFL conference? Do we redo that? Do we keep them now? Is that too disruptive? Like I said, Seattle, kind of all that stuff in the mix. But where do you, I guess, ideally now, as we've kind of read through everything before we get out, like what would you like to see here moving into 6 and 27?
Well, I would like to see a West Coast presence, like we talked about. I would like to see the Houston Gamblers come back and be in the USFL conference. We've talked about this a lot, about how that just felt like a compromise somehow. I'm not sure the Roughnecks IP was as strong as the Gamblers, or vice versa, or whatever the reason was. Mad chatter, thank you. But I think, what I would like to see as we get into I would love to see 4 more teams. That might be a lot to take on in an initial expansion. So what I do like about this is, if they stick to the plan, what we think they will, it'll be 2 teams in 26 and 2 teams in 27. Now, again, let's hope there's still a league. I'm optimistic. I want to see a lot of good things happen this year first. That's one thing I want to see. Is I want to see, even if the viewership is flat, I think it was good enough that it was successful with 850,000. And again, we don't know if that really included some of the streaming numbers, but I think there's a lot of opportunity, because, as we know, it is a league of opportunity. But I think there's a lot of opportunity to have a stronger year than they had last year, which I still think was a very successful year, and get to that where expansion makes sense, and that these are, it's a strong league that will have a strong brand. That's not just the people that are you and I and the people watching this. It's maybe a little bit more so, and kind of growing in public perception. And when you add teams, you add communities and cities, and I think you add fans, and that's a rising tide right there.
Curious your thoughts, and then Pat has a question about kind of reaching out to ownership here. But I think in the initial reports out, and forgive me now, it's like a fever dream ago, but when the initial reports came out of the merger and all that, and then Ohio was in the mix, but then I believe Arizona was in the mix, and
I do remember that.
Whether you relocate Seattle there, you add a team, is that far enough West Coast? You're still Texas kind of adjacent there. You're building, it's like the Oregon Trail. We're kind of building more west.
Right.
Does that do anything for you? I don't love Arizona as a market. I mean, like, the Cardinals are a great team. Seahawks beat them yesterday, but like
they did.
It doesn't. Arizona doesn't feel like a hotbed of. I mean, even the Diamondbacks, like World Series contending, right? 2 seasons ago. Really big drop off, right, in attendance, all that. I mean, it feels like they're more of a casual kind of market. There is my point. Kind of thoughts on that, if Arizona fits that.
I like it if it's not going to be Seattle, Portland, Oakland, or San Diego. I think it is west enough. The Las Vegas thing, we got to stop with this. No more. But I mean, yes, it's west enough, I think, to have, for me anyway, as you asked, for a West Coast presence, which I just think you've got to get. You got to get something more than the mostly Central Time Zone and a couple in the Eastern Time Zone.
Yeah, Jan here says Seattle, Oakland, San Diego, Vegas. I like Oakland. I think you can ride that, especially following off the A's now and everything. Yep. We were just there for the Mariners kind of last homes, their last whatever home playing in Oakland and kind of all that stuff. And man, that's a brutal market right now. If you're a sports fan there, right, the Warriors have moved. Obviously the Raiders have moved. Now the A's are moving. Like, I think that's a no-brainer. I don't know if you do the Coliseum there. Probably not, right? That's huge. But there other areas, I don't know. I think, to me, Oakland, if you're not going to do San Diego, but I do think, and I've heard this, like, you can't do California and the taxes and the labor. Like, you got to suck it up and do it. Like, you have to. I think at this point you have to say, okay, we're making an effort. If we care enough about expanding and finding the right markets, we got to pay. And maybe you have to play those players an extra 8% or whatever to counterbalance that. I don't think any player would argue if you're like, if you and I are both playing and I'm on the Texas team and I'm like, you're getting paid an extra $600 a month. You're like, yeah, but they're going to take it down taxes. Like, okay, like, we understand these things.
And maybe this is the old school thinking that we don't need anymore, but to me, it's like, if you're going to be a league that is taken seriously. I've always thought you've got to have a Southern California team and you've got to have a Northeastern team where in really New York, I think or New York, New Jersey to me. I mean, maybe that's not the mindset anymore. I mean, because again, we saw a lot of success, I think, and they hit a lot of numbers here in the UFL this past year without that. I think that could only add to it. And when you have a place like Oakland, to me, on the surface, now, again, I don't know the financials. And as you said, I'm one of those guys like, oh, I don't know about the taxes and all that. It to me just seems like on the surface, what a perfect market to put a team in, because there's so much opportunity there. And there's got to be a fan base who's hungry for professional sports again, that, maybe on any level.
Jan here says, do you think they suck up a New York cost before a West Coast expansion?
If the West Coast is in California, they might be, again, we're talking finances. You're right. But I think a New York cost would probably be a lot less, because they're not going to be housed there. They fly in and, play the game, then fly back to Arlington. So it might actually be cheaper to do that, to be in the New York, New Jersey area. And there's a lot of places that they could go that might be a lot more cost effective than playing, unfortunately, in a place like Oakland.
Abdul says, don't respect Cashman Field, John Lewis. Cashman Field's a dump.
That place, a buddy of mine was on the broadcast crew of one of the Las Vegas games, and he does all kinds of he does all kinds of, from Major League Baseball to everything else. He actually worked on one of the Alliance of American Football crews, which was a story to itself. But he said Cashman Field was one of the worst places he's ever been, and the sight lines were bad. The place was just not good. And it was so weird in Las Vegas. They kept having bad weather there.
Well, I can't remember who it was, if it was Matt Berry or someone else that was on the call. And like, he was on our show the next week. Like one of the guys, I can't remember if it was him or Tom Luganbill, one of the guys that came on the show, but they were in that structure. I'm like, oh, man, like, what was that? They're like, dude, that was scary. Like,
it was scary watching it
on the show. It was very terrifying. No, you can't do that. But no, I'm with you there. But they got to suck up. We got look at this. We got Van checking in here in the chat. Van, I wore your jacket all over Vancouver. Your Marquez jacket with the your sleeves. I didn't get as many comments from Evan and Andy as I would have liked, but I did. And there's stop with San Diego. USSD has much less capacity used currently. Do we care about? I would play like who was it that said like we'll play in the parking lot on the side of the road? We don't care.
Right. Well, and I think if I'm not mistaken, was it San Diego? There was one of the markets that had been kind of bandied about even before all this, where they were building a new soccer stadium that was I think it was a USL soccer stadium. So it feels like some of those venues, like there was some talk about, in this, that Louisville was a place that had been brought up. And a lot of people were like, well, Cardinal Stadium, 60,000 people, which Cardinal Stadium would be great if you played a team there. But you also have Lynn Family Stadium, which seats 15,000 and is one of the nicest USL stadiums around. The only problem is you have a USL team and an NWSL team that plays at Lynn Family Stadium, which scheduling would be a nightmare. And I don't know if they'd ever let them do it. But I think some of these USL teams, even though they play kind of at the same time, there could be some opportunity to play in those kinds of places.
Yeah, I'm still talking about New York, and I agree. I've talked a lot with Seth, friend of the show and all that, and having both coasts, but especially having New York and LA, but really helps your bottom line of TV ratings, just having games from New York, from the New York market, even if you're only attracting, 5% of whatever the people like. Again, it's no offense to the Memphises of the world or even New Orleans or Birmingham. Like you need markets with a lot of people, even if it's the 16th thing on the minds of some of the people there. You saw the Guardians games. I know Mike covered that back in 2020. Like even if you're only getting a fraction, which is funny to me because that's kind of the thought process of spring football in general, right? Is the NFL gets 100 million people, and if we could just get a fraction of that, like. Here you go.
Right.
Like just even if you're into New York, like even if you just get a fraction of that, Philip, they're not doing another Texas team. We don't need foreign.
No, that's enough. And it's not a zero-sum game. I mean, if you add a team in New York or whatever, it's not going to take away from the Memphises or Birminghams or St. Louis's or anyone. I mean, again, to me, it's a rising tide.
let's see here. Mad Chatter talking about Buffalo. Now we're getting some things about this, and then you know, yeah, Russ Brandon.
I mean, that's true.
Whatever.
There is a Buffalo connection. You're right. Absolutely.
Get that news. I still don't understand that stadium they're building. Like, we're building a stadium that's smaller than the one we have, and it's not a dome, and we're not. I don't understand the thought. But that's the story for another day. Yeah, Joe. No, like I mean, all the way back to the Guardians, like, again, and people poo-pooed, right? Like, back in 2020, everyone poo-pooed, oh, the XFL attendance here is terrible. Like, you would die for Tampa Bay Viper attendance right now. You would die for New York Guardians attendance. You would die for the LA Wildcats attendance. When you look at, like, Memphis, right? So it's all relative. And I know we talked the XFL viewership back in 01 versus whatever, but this is a lot more apples to apples. So you would die for some of these ones that were deemed not good enough back in 2020.
Yeah, and that was the 2020. I mean, people will remember that was kind of a huge deal when they were, because it was like, oh, spring football is really coming back. The AAF was just a non-contender. Like, this is the real deal. And yeah, and you had the New York and the LA markets, and it was to me, that makes it bigger again. And maybe that's old school me thinking that when you have a league, you got to have a New York and LA, but it just seems to me like it just has always worked out that way.
We're at 4:30 now. Anything else we want to make sure? I'm going to shower here before we got Monday Night Football. We've got
that's right.
Kraken they're playing. We got Thanksgiving Dorothy's on their way home from concert. Anything else we want to touch on? Any other thoughts here today?
No, but I'm always jealous of people on the West Coast who get to watch Monday Night Football at like 5:15. It's like 7:30. It's 7:30 here in Louisville right now. So I got to wait. I usually fall asleep by halftime. So I'm jealous of you. So, but Reed, I always love being on your show, and you and I talk a lot offline. It's fun to talk here, and keep it PG rated, as we usually don't in our text chains and everything. But it's always fun to talk about this. And this is newsworthy. This is not trying to make something up. This is the UFL is talking about expansion. And I think that is really good news for a lot of spring football fans, because to me, spring football has been as viable as it's ever been. Maybe since the original USFL. And, even then it was iffy, and there are a lot of stories from that. But I just think that, with this network ownership and everybody behind it, that it has an opportunity to grow, and we're starting to see players go to the NFL. I just think I think it's all positive right now. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. And again, I really, in this space, and the same with the CFL. I mean, this is anything. I mean, even the NFL, but they have a lot of other stuff. Like, this is the biggest clickbait, sugar candy rush. We're bored. Let's talk expansion that you can do. And so I hate to get on that all the time, because I just think, like, even the Switzerland thing, like, oh, so UFL expanding to your, like, you can do, but when there's a press release, because again, we weren't going to do the stream. I mean, I tweeted out and I said, this league's crazy. I'm going back to bed. And Mac's like, I think we should talk about it. And Mike, and they're all going in the chat all day. And like I said, I was getting the text, but I laughed because in our group chat, and John, if you ever got back on Twitter, we could incorporate you into that. It's on the Twitter chat.
Maybe one of these days.
But even on there, right? And this is like the UFL media. I mean, as much as you want to joke about that, but this is a group, and all day in there, what about this? What about this? What about? I'm like, you guys, because at the end of the day, we're fans, and we're all fans and all this stuff. But like, you're just like, you bought in, like, it worked. We're all talking about the UFL today. I didn't think I'd be doing the podcast.
If that was the strategy, then it certainly worked. And that's what a lot of people need to understand. If we criticize the UFL or whatever, it's because we want it to succeed. We're not, if we didn't care, we wouldn't have talked for an hour and a half about it. So we want it to succeed. You're right. We're fans, and hopefully there'll be a lot more that come aboard in 2025, and this thing might take off.
So anyone, get ready for football, everyone. Give a thumbs up to the stream, please, if you can. Like and subscribe if you haven't. We're going to give away. I actually hung out with Dustin in Vancouver. Dustin was there of Royal Retros. He was there with his CFLPA. They've got that big partnership now with Royal Retros, but he was up there. We BS with Dustin for about half an hour at the bar, had a beer and hung out, Dorothy and I and him. So that was fun, but we're going to give away 2 custom jerseys. when we hit 4,000 subscribers, we'll do a CFL one and then a UFL, or we can do C. It doesn't matter to me, but we'll do 2. So if you want, like, I only want a CFL, like, we can do all that. But Dustin will get. I mean, he's already on board, and it's a great giveaway for me because then he can just ship them right out to you. You know, you can get custom whatever you want. I'll cover all the costs, and he'll ship it right out. So like and subscribe if you want to be a part of that. And then we're kind of TBD right now. Once we get back into regular, you know, kind of preseason UFL, probably in the new year, we'll be doing the regular kind of weekly episodes. But right now, it's just whenever news came out. I was traveling a lot this summer. We kind of did the tail end of the CFL through the Grey Cup, but like I wasn't home a Monday or Friday, like any of September or October. So it was hard to get all that done, but we're back on the horse now. John, anything else you want to plug?
No, I just really appreciate you having me on. It's always good to talk to you about all things UFL and everything else.
All right, everyone, take care. Let's go Kraken. Let's go. Who do we got? Is this we need Chargers tonight. We need Andy Murray. So we're a pro Chargers podcast.
Pro Chargers. Okay, I'll go with it.
All right, we'll see you guys, John. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.